Christian, this Shaq, I owe you an apology. I wasn't really familiar with your game and, how you travel.
Man, you're a casual.
And, played,
When I think of hyped NBA players that teams moved on from, one that comes to mind is OJ Mayo, one of the best high school prospects in my lifetime, drafted number 3 to Memphis, but by the middle of his rookie contract, he was losing minutes, was coming off the bench, and then eventually they let him go and he entered free agency. These 5 players in this video who were on rosters in 2023 had a decent amount of hype at one point in their careers. It wasn't OJ Mayo hype, but teams still moved on from them. Imagine averaging 17 points per game over the last 4 seasons. You enter free agency excited for a new deal, but nobody wants you and you're basically looking for scraps in the fridge at 1 a.m. That is the reality for Christian Wood. On talent alone, he is one of the best scorers for someone that is 6'9" or taller, but he's about to be on his 8th team in 8 years. It's been reported that no team has offered him a contract for more than the minimum, which is crazy because here's what his value was about a year ago. The Houston Rockets got a late first-round pick from Dallas for him. Some people were excited about him in Dallas because at one point during his time in Houston, he was averaging 21 points, 10 rebounds on 50% shooting. Now Houston was terrible as a team and his stats were not driving any wins, but the expectation in Dallas was that Christian could create offense for himself and be a secondary creator next to Luka. The Mavs needed help badly in the front court because they did not have enough bigs in that series against Golden State. They got killed on the glass and at the rim. So why didn't the Mavs have any interest in bringing him back? Offense was not the problem for Wood in Dallas. Their offense statistically was great with him on the court. It was his overall defense that was a problem and kept him out of the lineup. He only started in 17 games. A few times I was watching a Mavs game and I'm saying, wait, Jason Kidd is keeping Wood on the bench for the entire 4th quarter, even when they are getting nothing from Dwight Powell. The funny thing is, Wood was actually pretty good for the first few months, but then he got injured, and after the All-Star break, that's when things got weird. His minutes took a hit. Jason Kidd said some stuff about his playing time to reporters. It seemed like he was in the doghouse. Okay, so as talented as he is as a one-on-one scorer, a big man who can't rebound in traffic, isn't a playmaker for their teammates, doesn't set hard screens, and is a bad defender, is borderline unplayable. They just are. Especially when you're on a team with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, the rest of the front court needs to be players that fit around them with defense and passing. The things Wood does well is stuff the Mavs do not need. Grant Williams is a better fit next to Luka and Kyrie than Christian Wood, even if he scores 0 points. To be fair to Christian Wood, this isn't the first time the Mavs have played hardball when they're trying to upgrade. They did it with Steve Nash 20 years ago. They did it with Tyson Chandler in 2012 because they wanted to chase other stars like Dwight Howard. They were not all in on Jalen Brunson being the number 2 next to Luka, and he left. Not that I believe in Christian Wood as a supporting piece next to Luka and Kyrie, because he's not. The Mavs need low-maintenance guys who play defense and shoot standstill threes, but the Mavs have a history of not fully committing to players when they're close to free agency, so I have to mention it. It's just a tough market right now if you're one of these offensive-minded power forwards that can't defend the basket or guard small forwards. And this isn't even getting to Wood's suspension and playing time decrease for 2 separate incidents with the Houston Rockets. There have been questions about his commitment to a locker room for years. Christian made a successful basketball career for himself because he's stubborn, and he's currently at this point in his basketball career where no one is offering him a long-term deal because he's stubborn. A 27-year-old 6'7" wing that averaged 25 points per game in a playoff series 2 years ago and is an all-NBA defender should have had multiple teams looking at him for a long-term deal once they hit free agency. But other than the Houston Rockets, Dillon Brooks was not linked to other teams. The Grizzlies did not want him back. They told Dillon in their exit meeting that they would not be re-signing him to a new contract. We kind of saw this coming last year when the Grizzlies did not extend him when he was eligible last summer. The Grizzlies wanted to see a little bit more from him before extending, and their bet paid off. Brooks' value as a player took a nosedive this past regular season, as I'm sure you know. The playoffs made it even worse. Yeah, he called LeBron old and created unnecessary discourse around the team, but we've seen teams look the other way if they have a productive player that is annoying. Nobody was dying to sign him in free agency because he did not convert enough of his open shots and he doesn't play make for his teammates. He shot below 40% from the field. It's really that simple. I mean, what do you want to do when it's taking 13 shots a game for someone to score 14 points? The positive of bringing in Dillon Brooks is that he'd immediately be the team's best defender on the perimeter. The Rockets need help anywhere on defense. Dillon is getting a little bit underrated on that end. I think people are forgetting how steady he is on defense. He can guard wings and can chase shooters. That's a rare combination because, to be honest, there are other good perimeter defenders that can guard ball, but when they have to chase a shooter running through screens, they struggle a little bit. Here is another good thing for the Rockets. Brooks is going to be in a more limited role offensively. The Rockets are developing Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Amen Thompson, and Sengun. Dillon in a more limited role where he's just taking standstill threes, the occasional pull-up, some transition scoring. That's the role he needs to be in. Now, he got his money, and I was shocked at the number Houston gave him, but his career arc since 2021 has been kind of sad because other than Dillon himself and people in the organization in Memphis, not many people expected him to outperform his draft position 6 years ago. He was one of the first pieces of the new Grizzlies generation once Marc Gasol and Mike Conley were gone. He averaged 25 points per game in a playoff series 2 years ago, as I mentioned, and I still remember that excitement people had for Brooks going into that next season. Last month on June 19th, Warriors GM Mike Dunleavy Jr. said they plan on having Jordan Poole in Golden State for 4 more years at least. 3 days later, the Warriors traded him to the Washington Wizards. Man, what happened? Jordan Poole looked really special during the 2022 season. 22 years old, had a scoring package of pull-up shooting, off-ball shooting, constant driving, touch around the basket. He looked like a 2 to 3 time All-Star. He signed a $140 million contract extension last year. Everyone in Golden State loved this guy. Everything was great until this past season. There's a lot of bad Jordan Poole stats you can point to, but this one stands out to me. Poole's points per game has dropped in every series since playing the Denver Nuggets in round 1 of last year. Every series there's been a dip. It's clear why the trade happened. 1, the Warriors wanted out of Poole's deal they just gave him because his play last season didn't meet that number value, and their luxury tax bill is enormous, so getting rid of Poole helps out ownership. Number 2, Poole wanted a bigger role in offense, and that's not happening with Klay Thompson at the same position. And number 3, Draymond punching him killed the team's chemistry. Steve Kerr has publicly said the team never recovered from that practice, and that's not surprising when you factor in that the other young players weren't locked in all season. At the end of the day, we've seen Jordan Poole be an efficient player on a title team. We've seen young players have a down year and bounce back, and he was good as a starter this past regular season when Steph was out, so it's not like he was awful the entire year. It was a weird season with chemistry and what everyone's role on the team was going to be, especially with the younger players. I wouldn't write him off yet, but he was in a difficult spot last season because he's not a defender, he's not a rebounder, he's not a reliable playmaker for his teammates. Most of his value is dependent on him scoring the ball, and if he's not doing that, then he's going to lose playing time. You saw this in Game 7 versus Sacramento when the Warriors went with a more traditional sized lineup with Steph, Klay, Wiggins, Draymond, and Looney. The number 8 pick in the 2019 NBA draft is now on the Los Angeles Lakers. Jackson Hayes' rookie contract with the New Orleans Pelicans was over, and they did not re-sign him. Coming into that draft, if you remember, Hayes had a lot of hype at Texas, and he was looked at as one of the supporting pieces of the Pelicans' rebuild with Zion Williamson. Hayes is not someone you initiate offense with. He's a 6'11" center, a vertical athlete. He can finish lobs, defend the rim with his length. He's fast moving up and down the court. If you're a guard that can pass and can run a pick and roll, Hayes can demand attention as a roll man, which can open up shooters in the corner. Hayes fits in the mold of one of those guys like DeAndre Jordan, Mitchell Robinson, and JaVale McGee. But he's missing some of those skills at those centers that I mentioned that make them who they are. Mitchell Robinson is pretty strong. It's not that easy moving that guy around, as we saw Jared Allen struggle to compete on the glass with him in the playoffs. Jackson Hayes isn't someone with a lot of strength. He's 220 pounds, which is pretty heavy, but in the NBA, that's somebody you can move. Hayes is also not that great of a rebounder for his size, which is kinda crazy considering how well he gets up vertically. He just doesn't have the feel for certain parts of the game on defense. Defense at the center position is a lot of just being in the right spot at the right time. A lot of boring stuff that you do not see in highlights, that stuff that you need to watch over an entire game. If you're the big in drop coverage defending a pick and roll, can you stop the guard from starting a gather for his layup and then recover back to your matchup to stop the lob pass? You know, little stuff like that, that's just not in a highlight. These are things you've seen from a Clint Capella in Houston, you've seen from DeAndre Jordan do in LA when he was in his prime. The Pelicans needed a center that complements Zion and Ingram. Hayes does not do that. The good thing is, he's only 23 years old, his weaknesses are fixable, and the Lakers have a couple of good lob passers that Hayes can catch alley-oops from. They have done well with developing younger players recently. Bol Bol was waived by the Orlando Magic and then 2 weeks later signed by the Phoenix Suns. People really like Bol online. He trends on Twitter every other week, it seems. People like his physical attributes and potential as a 7'2" perimeter player. Those unicorn type of players are going to get a bunch of chances to prove themselves. He was hyped in high school. He was hyped at Oregon. You'll see these troll comparisons with him and Wemby, but just watching them move on defense for one possession is all you need to know. Let's be honest, Bol is one of the least impactful big man defenders in the league. Not quick enough laterally to defend on the perimeter, but also isn't strong enough to compete for rebounds or defend the rim. His timing on defensive rotations isn't good. He has length, but he can't reliably use it to get his team stops. And on offense, he plays like a guard as a 7-footer, but has no passing feel, inconsistent shooter. He shot 4 of 48 from the 3 since January 1st. It's hard to put a player like that on the court when everyone is trying to win and compete. But there was some good from Bol this year. At one point, he was averaging 14 points per game, 8 rebounds, almost 2 blocks a night on nearly 60% shooting, and was actually a contender for most improved player. He was getting a lot of points in transition. That was the best stretch of his career, but he fell out of those most improved discussions. He was barely getting on the court by the midpoint of the season. A combination of the Magic getting healthy and him being careless as a decision maker on offense is why you saw less of him. But it's not all bad. If you're a Bol Bol optimist, it's his 4th season in the NBA, but this past year was his first season getting consistent minutes in a rotation. He only played in 53 games total in his first 3 seasons. Now he's with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Brad Beal. Frank Vogel is the new head coach. He's been a part of some great defensive teams, so Bol could learn on defense, but I don't know, man. He's an entertaining player when he's on the court. If the Suns somehow turn him into a competent player, that'd be cool because a 7'2" perimeter player being good is fun for the league. But I'm mostly out on Bol Bol as a real contributor. It's just hard to believe in a big man that's not a reliable defender or rebounder. And that's it for me. Appreciate it if you made it to the end of this one. Been a minute, but I just wanted to talk about a couple of players that are on new teams. I'll see you guys in my next one.